This is the second video of the series about pfSense and UniFi Layer 3 switch. This video covers the simple scenario where you only have one UniFi Layer 3 switch in your pfSense setup. We will go through the step-by-step setups in both pfSense and UniFi Network Controller to make UniFi Layer 3 routing work with pfSense. This is my lab environment. I run pfSense on a mini PC. The internet part of the pfSense is connected to my home network for internet, and the UniFi switch used in this video is a 24-port USW Pro switch. It's a layer 3 switch. I will create two VLANs managed by this UniFi switch. We will SSH to the switch to see the backend settings. Then let's see if we don't do any pfSense side configurations, what are supported, what are not. Then we will work on the pfSense configurations. We will examine whether or how the routing works between the two UniFi VLANs and between the UniFi VLANs and the internet. In the later part of the video, we will troubleshoot two internet access issues. First one, we even cannot ping a internet IP address. Second problem is the DNS name resolving doesn't work. So we will see how to change pfSense configurations to make the internet access work. Okay, let's get started. This is the screen layout I'm going to use for this video. In the lower part of the screen, I have the two Linux desktops, and then the third one, I'm going to use it to SSH to UniFi Layer 3 switch. At this moment, both pfSense and UniFi Network Controller, they have the initial configurations. We are starting from a fresh environment. Let me go to the UniFi Network Controller, click Network Setting. You can see the default network. The router information shows third-party gateway. It makes sense because we are using pfSense as the router. However, to enable layer 3 routing on the switch, the router won't be pfSense anymore for the two UniFi VLANs. Let's create the two VLANs, 111 and 121. Click Create New Network. Let's give it network name, VLAN 111. Under the router dropdown, you can find all the layer 3 supporting UniFi switches. In my case, there are two listed, the Pro 24, the Enterprise 24 PoE. In this video, we are not going to use this PoE switch. I will use it in my next video for two UniFi switches. So in this video, we are only going to use the USW Pro 24. Choose it. Then let's disable the auto scale network so that I can change the subnet because I don't like the default 2 subnet. Let me change it to 111. Okay, done. And the next part, I'm going to do the advanced setting. Let me click the menu button. As you can see, there's a bug here. Right after I click the menu button, all my previous settings seems to be gone. So here the router dropdown goes back to third-party gateway, right? Don't worry too much about that. Let's reselect USW Pro. Everything you said is back already. So now we are in the menu configuration section. Let's give it VLAN ID 111 as we show in the diagram. And for DHCP in this video, let's stick with the DHCP server. I'm going to have a dedicated video for DHCP relay option. So in this video, we are only going to use the DHCP server setting. Just to be clear, the DHCP here is not the DHCP which by default running in your pfSense. It's the native small DHCP running in the UniFi Layer 3 switch. That's what the DHCP server means here. Scroll up a little bit. I have no problem with the DHCP range and nothing else to change. So let me click the Add Network button. Okay, after this VLAN is created, let me refresh the network controller. See, now you can see a interesting VLAN created by the system. So it's automatically generated as long as you have at least one VLAN managed by your UniFi layer 3 switch. You will see this inter-VLAN routing network, and no matter how many switches you have, you will only see one such VLAN. So let's click on it. Let's see what's inside. As you can see, it has this strange IP address, and the subnet is hard-coded, so don't bother, don't change it. And this information is very important because later when we proceed with the pfSense configuration, this IP address is needed. This is the default gateway in your UniFi layer 3 switch. We will talk about this IP address later. Okay, let me go back. Now we already created the VLAN 111, right? Just fast forward. Let me create VLAN 121. We have the two VLANs created within UniFi network controller. It's time to take care of these two Linux machines. We want them to belong to the two newly created VLANs. Let's go to UniFi switch, select the USW Pro switch, click on ports, and choose port manager. You can already see even from the port manager, the first part connected to the first Linux virtual machine, the second part to the second one. We want the first one to be in VLAN 111. The second one belongs to VLAN 121. So let me select the first part. For the port profile, choose VLAN 111. This VLAN we just created in UniFi network controller, so UniFi automatically generated the port profile to be used by your switch. Apply changes. In the same way, select the second part, choose VLAN 121. Apply changes. Now let's go to the two Linux machines to make sure they get the new IP address, because we just changed the port profile. We want them to get the new IP addresses from the DHCP server we just set up in the two VLANs, right? Let me do it first in the first Linux machine. Go to setting, click the wired button, disable the wired, and then click it again to enable it. So this way I force the IP address to be refreshed from the new DHCP server. So let's see what's the IP address just received. IP for A. Yeah, as you can see, it's 111 subnet and start with 6 IP address. That's the exact starting IP address in our DHCP server range we just set in UniFi network controller, right? In the same way, let me do it in the second Linux machine. Yeah, this one works as well. It's the subnet 121 and the IP address is .6. We are good with these two Linux virtual machines IP addresses. Then let's validate whether these two Linux machines can communicate with each other. So from the first Linux, let me ping the second one. Ping it. Yeah, the ping is successful. That means our settings in network controller simply works. Kill it. Then I'm interested about the routing. So let me try command trace route. As you can see, the routing path is very simple. The only router involved is 111.1, which is the UniFi switch router itself. So pfSense is not even part of this routing. So you can see from this diagram, from the 111 VLAN, we ping 121 VLAN machine, right? And then the traffic just goes through this router within UniFi switch and then directly routed to the other VLAN. That's the purpose of inter-VLAN routing. You don't want your router to be involved. You want your switch to do the inter-VLAN routing. At this moment, the layer 3 routing within the UniFi switch is already working, but let's check what are still missing. Let me ping a machine in my home network. See this diagram? Keep in mind my video is done in my lab environment. So my home network here is on the WAN part of the pfSense, the internet part. Let me ping this IP address. Okay, no response. It doesn't look good. But why? Because to reach somewhere outside of the layer 3 switch, we need the help from pfSense. But at this moment, pfSense even doesn't have any clues about what's going on in my UniFi switch. So to understand what are needed in pfSense, let's SSH into the UniFi switch to check the backend layer 3 related settings. From the UniFi network controller, I can find the IP address for the UniFi switch. Here in this SSH session, let me log on to it. Make sure you read this notice and take your own risk if you decide to proceed. Let me telnet to itself, en for enable. Then let me run this command, show IP route. See the first row? It's a static route. It says for all traffic. By default, route via the default gateway, the special address we saw in UniFi controller previously. This routing table is not surprising. We can already get the idea even just from the network controller, right? Then let's see something which do not show up in the controller. So let me run another command, show IP interface brief. You can find the interface IP address for VLAN 4040, the inter-VLAN routing function. It's this IP address, 10.255.253.2. So it's hard-coded and it ends with 2 because it's the first layer 3 switch in my network. Note down this IP address because it will be used in pfSense in our later configurations. pfSense needs to know the VLAN 4040 network, know how to route traffics to it, and how to route traffics to the VLAN 111 and 121, even though those two VLANs are not configured within pfSense. pfSense needs to know how to route traffics to these two different subnets. It's time to move to pfSense to do the configurations. In pfSense, under interfaces, choose VLANs. Okay, it's blank here. We need to create a new VLAN, but not for VLAN 111 and 121 because they are managed by UniFi switch, not by pfSense. Instead, we need to create a VLAN for 4040. Add a VLAN. Parent interface, it should be LAN, not the default WAN. And the VLAN tag should be 4040. From UniFi switch SSH, we know the inter-VLAN routing need a special VLAN within UniFi switch. It has VLAN ID 4040. So here in pfSense, we need to give the new VLAN a 4040 VLAN tag. Let's give it a description. Say VLAN 4040. Okay, save it. Then go to interface assignments. Under available network parts, choose the one we just created, add. Then the new one is created with a name OPT1. Let's click on it. Enable the interface. I don't like the name. Let me change it to VLAN 4040. The IPv4 configuration type, I choose static IP. And scroll down here under IPv4 address. We need to use the IP address that we got from UniFi controller for the inter-VLAN routing network's gateway IP address, which is also the same one as you can see in the SSH session for default gateway. So basically this IP address. Let me input it. Okay. Then the subnet mask is 24. Then save. See, this is the simple interface we just created. Apply changes. Okay, we have the interface, which means Now pfSense is able to communicate with the VLAN 4040 if we wanted to. But it is still not aware of the two VLANs, VLAN 111 and VLAN 121. Or let me put it the other way, it doesn't know how to route traffics to these two subnets. So we need to define static routes. Go to System, Routing. To create static routes, we need to first have the corresponding gateway. The gateway is in the UniFi switch side. Let me add it. And let me choose the interface we just created, VLAN 4040. Give it a name. Let's say first UniFi layer 3 switch. Gateway name cannot have spaces, so that's why I have underscore here. Then for the gateway IP address, we need to use the IP address we got from this show IP interface brief command in SSH, which is the .2 IP address. This gateway IP address is not the .1 IP address, which we got from the switch side for the switch default gateway. No, this is the gateway to be used by pfSense to route the traffics. So we need to give it this .2 IP address. Okay, then everything's good. Let me save it, apply changes. Now we can create static routes. Click on the static routes. There's nothing here. Let me add one. Destination network. Let me first define the one for VLAN 111, right? So here we are not defining a VLAN. Instead, we are defining a subnet, a destination network. Okay. Subnet mask is 24. By the way, where this information comes from, it's from the UniFi controller when we define the VLAN 111, right? So it's the same information. Then when it comes to gateway, select the gateway we just created, then save, apply changes. So in the same way, let me create another static route for VLAN 121. Okay, now both static routes are created. Now it seems we are done with the pfSense configurations, but are we? Let's test it in the Linux client machine. Let me try to ping the same IP address I just tried, kill the previous ping, and run it again. No, it still doesn't work. So what's wrong? Theoretically, the network traffics should be routed correctly. You know what? One thing we missed is the firewall rule, specifically for VLAN 4040. Go to Firewall, Rules, click VLAN 4040. You can see nothing's here. By default, for new interface, there are no default firewall rules. You may know outbound rules in pfSense are never required. So the rules you define in an interface are applied to the inbound direction. Because the rules for VLAN 4040 do not exist yet, no inbound traffics can happen. So let me create a simple rule to allow all traffics for VLAN 4040. Add a new rule, actions path, interface, VLAN 4040, protocol, let me say any protocol, and then source destinations any to any. As I mentioned, I just want to make it simple, so any to any works for me. Okay, apply changes. Now let's go back to the two Linux virtual machines. Ping the same my home network IP address. Okay, it works. Finally, great news. So let's try to understand how the routing works. Let me run traceroute command, but this time against this IP address, which is within my home network. So totally 3 hops. The first hop to the 111.1 gateway. Of course, this makes sense. And then the next hop is to this special address. Remember, this is the default gateway for the VLAN 4040 network, right? Then the last hop is to my destination machine already. I draw this routing diagram. As you can see, the source is our VLAN 111 machine. The first hop to this VLAN router within the UniFi layer 3 switch, and then it go to the pfSense. How? Through the default gateway, right? This is the second hop, and then it go while pfSense reached the destination machine. Okay, now we understand how the traffics reach the target. Now let's examine how the response is transferred back to the source. The response can reach pfSense, no problem. How pfSense knows it should use the VLAN 4040 interface to route the response back to VLAN 111 through static route, this purple link I draw here. So let's examine the static route in pfSense. Go to System, Routing, Static Routes. The first one, it tells pfSense to use this gateway in UniFi switch to reach this subnet. So basically the response will be routed by pfSense to UniFi switch through the static route so that in the end the traffic can go back to the source. Now we are clear about how the routing works. It seems we are done about this video, right? Because we can access internet already. But wait a second, we haven't tried DNS yet. Let me use the second Linux, which is in the 121 VLAN. Let me ping a internet domain name. No, unfortunately, it doesn't work. To understand what is wrong, let me run dig command. You can see the DNS server is set to this IP address, which is correct because it's the default gateway for the UniFi switch, right? But here there's a warning. It says recursion requested but not available. What it means is the upstream DNS resolver didn't reply. In our case, the pfSense DNS resolver didn't reply. To resolve this DNS issue, I will talk about two different approaches in this video. First approach, you don't even need to understand why it happened. You simply make change in the UniFi network controller. You don't even need to touch pfSense, and then it will work. In the second approach, let's discuss why it happened and how to resolve it from pfSense side. In the first approach, we changed the DNS resolver. Let me go to UniFi network controller, go to settings, network. So let me just demo it using the VLAN 111. Scroll down to the DHCP configuration. For DHCP service management, click show options. By default, the DHCP DNS server is disabled. Then by default, it will use the default gateway to resolve the domain name. But if we enable it, we have the option to provide multiple DNS servers. In my case, let me use this IP address. This is my pfSense in my home network. So this IP address is not for this pfSense in this diagram. It's the pfSense in my home network, another pfSense, the upstream pfSense. I can set it to that pfSense, or if you want, you can set to some other available DNS server, for example 8888. But in my case, let's simply use my home network's pfSense. Apply changes. Then remember, I just changed the VLAN 111, right? I have not changed the VLAN 121. So let me go to the first Linux machine. Because we changed the DHCP settings to make it effective, I need to force the DHCP info to be refreshed like we did before. Disable the wired, then enable it. Okay. So it got new IP address. This time, let's ping the same domain name, which failed in the second Linux machine, right? Ping. Okay, it works. If we try the second Linux machine, still doesn't work because we only changed the VLAN 111, right? Go back to the first Linux machine. Let's try to understand why this time it works. Let me run the dig command. You see the server is the one we just set, my home network's pfSense. It did provide response. We simply bypass this pfSense DNS server. We bypass this gateway, right? We directly reach out to upstream DNS server. But this approach doesn't resolve the root cause of our original issue. Why the UniFi switch default gateway cannot resolve the domain name. The issue happens in pfSense side. So now let's talk about the second approach. Let me go to pfSense, go to Services, DNS Resolver. Then under General Settings, you can see by default, it already selected all network interfaces, including our newly created VLAN 4040 interface, right? But if you think from the DNS resolving process perspective, the DNS client, in our case, the IP address for the first Linux machine, it's in the subnet 111. You may still remember pfSense doesn't really know subnet 111. The static routes we defined, yes, it can help routing, but it cannot help DNS resolving. So what happened was when the Linux machine sent the DNS resolving request to our pfSense, it did reach the DNS resolver in pfSense, but pfSense doesn't know the subnet 111, so it ignored the request. It didn't reply. That's why we see the dig warning message previously, right? So to resolve the issue, we can create an entry in the access list to allow the DNS resolver access from the subnet 111. Let me click on access list, add to give it a name. Let me say VLAN 111, and then the action is allow network. It's our VLAN 111's network subnet. Subnet mask is 24. Save. Apply changes. What we just did was we allow the DNS resolver in pfSense to provide service to this subnet. For the subnets or VLANs managed by pfSense, you don't need to do this because it's taken care of by the system automatically. But because pfSense doesn't know our subnet 111, we have to add an entry to allow the access specifically. Okay, in the same way, let me create another entry for subnet 121. So now both subnets are allowed. We can go back to the Linux machine. Remember in UniFi Network Controller, we already changed the setting for VLAN 111, right? So the change we just did in pfSense is not relevant to this particular VLAN anymore, right? So then for the second approach, let me choose the VLAN 121 to test our DNS resolving to see whether it works. To be clear, I don't need to refresh the DHCP setting because we haven't changed anything from DHCP perspective, right? So I directly go to the second Linux machine. Let me ping the same domain. Yeah, see, it works. If we run the dig command, it's using the exact same old gateway as the server, but this time the DNS works without any problem. So the original root cause was not in the UniFi side, it's in the pfSense side. Before we make the pfSense configuration change, pfSense DNS resolver simply didn't provide service to our UniFi's VLAN clients. Okay, so now we successfully configured everything to Linux machines. They can communicate with each other. They can access the internet using IP address. They can get DNS service. Finally, it's the end of the video. As the last thing, let me mention the current biggest problem for people to adopt the UniFi Layer 3 routing feature. It is ACL. Don't be confused. I'm not talking about the pfSense DNS resolver access list. I'm talking about the access control list within UniFi switch. If you use pfSense as the router, it doesn't manage the VLANs which are managed by UniFi Layer 3 switches. think about if you use pfSense for different VLANs, how you control the access using firewall rules, right? Now for the VLANs managed by UniFi controllers, you cannot use pfSense firewall rules anymore, right? So then how you can achieve the equivalent access? The answer is ACL. In my channel, I have a separate video talking about UniFi Layer 3 switch and ACL. So UniFi switches do support ACL, but there are no web interfaces. So what you can do to utilize ACL is to do the configuration in command line in CLI. So your changes will not survive the switch reboot. I hope Ubiquiti can add the ACL support as soon as possible. Okay, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching.